Donald Trump slaps Angela Merkel with a made-up £300 billion NATO invoice to demand Germany pays back vast sums of debt. Donald Trump reportedly handed German Chancellor Angela Merkel a made-up invoice he printed out for £300 billion he believes the country owes NATO because it has not spent enough on defense, a source has claimed. The bill, which was reportedly given to the Chancellor during private talks last weekend, was described as outrageous by one unnamed German minister. They told the Sunday Times, the concept behind putting out such demands is to intimidate the other side, but the Chancellor took it calmly and will not respond to such provocations. All NATO countries have previously agreed to spend 2% of GDP on defense spending, but only 5 countries, the US, the UK, Greece, Poland and Estonia, are currently meeting that target. Germany, which currently spends around 1.23%, previously pledged to increase its defense spending in 2002, and it is believed that Mr. Trump's team calculated the amount Berlin has fallen short of the 2% target from that point, then added interest. But the move has been condemned by many Americans who said the move showed Mr. Trump failed to understand how NATO worked. Former Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton Robert Reich said, "Trump is an international embarrassment. To our allies around the world, he doesn't represent most Americans, and we're doing all we can." The alleged gesture came as Mr. Trump tweeted that Germany owed the US and NATO vast sums of money for the powerful, and very expensive, defense it provides to Germany. White House spokesman Sean Spicer subsequently denied that Mr. Trump had handed the invoice to Ms. Merkel, Business Insider reported. Under the terms of Article 5 of the NATO agreement, member states must come to the aid of each other if one is subject to military attack. It was originally signed in 1949 as a way to combat the dominance of the Soviet Union in Europe. As tensions have increased between Russia and the West over its annexation of Crimea, its support for rebels in the Donbas region of Ukraine and its intervention in Syria, vulnerable Eastern European states have seen their defenses bolstered by NATO troops. Countries which share a border with Russia, including Poland, Lithuania, and Estonia but not Germany, have seen one of the biggest deployments to Eastern Europe since the Cold War in recent weeks. But this does not mean the US is funding the defense of other countries. As Ivo Dalder, the US ambassador to NATO between 2009 and 2013, explained on Twitter last week, Washington decides how much it spends on defense on its own and has chosen to provide a large military commitment to Europe for its own security as well as that of its allies. But Mr. Trump has repeatedly suggested he may roll back the US commitment to NATO. On the campaign trail he called it obsolete and suggested he would cut spending, but since his inauguration he has attempted to reassure European leaders that he understood its strategic importance. During a NATO summit in February, U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis suggested the U.S. would moderate its commitment unless other members increased their own spending. He said, "No longer can the American taxpayer carry a disproportionate share of the defense of Western values. Americans cannot care more for your children's security than you do. Disregard for military readiness demonstrates a lack of respect for ourselves, for the alliance and for the freedoms we inherited, which are now clearly threatened." The bill was a further embarrassment during Ms. Merkel's first trip to the Trump White House after the president was roundly criticized for refusing to shake her hand during their initial meeting and then trying to suggest they had been hacked by Barack Obama in common, before receiving a whip.